Tom, how do you do with choices?
How do I do with choices? Ooh.
Yeah, you have to make a choice.
I'm not sure. Actually, I guess I kind of do it pretty naturally. Why do you ask?
You do? You feel natural? Well, there's an interesting study. I'd like to tell you about some neuroscientists that aren't from Canada. How would that be for you today?
I love it. That would be weird.
Oh, man. It would be weird. In fact, these neuroscientists, Tom, are from a small school you may not have heard of, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Oh, yeah.
And they're in a little place in Cambridge.
Okay.
The senior researcher Anne Graybiel has discovered that she had previously discovered the center for where the brain makes choices in rodents. But now they believe they have found how the brain makes choices and assigns those choices to pessimism, the feeling of anxiety that comes with pessimism. How about that?
Interesting. I don't get it. Can you please elaborate?
I can try. This is all about approach avoidance conflict. It describes situations in which people, or in this case, rodents, any mammals, mammals in general.
Wait, real quick, can I butt in? It's funny that you are going down this path because when you originally asked me, how do you make choices? My initial response that I didn't give was, what will make me feel less worse? But I thought that was going to be too much of a downer, so I didn't say it. And it sounds like I might have been right on track. Okay, go ahead.
You were right on the money. So back to mammals.
Yeah.
Mammals always have to decide between two options by weighing the positive and the negative aspects of each alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for you, you're looking at that next dozen Krispy Kreme donuts, and you have to stop yourself and say, how much worse am I willing to tolerate feeling before I eat all of these?
Yep.
So Professor Graybiel and her team, they conducted this research and they found the brain circuits responsible for this kind of decision-making. Then they found out having to decide in this approach avoidance conflict scenario that introduces significant stress. And there is a key learning here, and it starts in the caudate nucleus.
Ooh, I know caudate.
Oh,
yep.
God. Caudate nucleus. I love saying that. It makes me feel like I actually went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the small town of Cambridge.
They should really make an acronym out of
that. In this new study, so they recreated this scenario where the rodents have to choose by weighing their choices, which is going to make me feel less worse. Mm-hmm. The scientists offered the mice a squirt of juice.
Oh,
okay. So that's good. That's a reward.
Yep.
It's a reward thing.
Juice squirt.
But they coupled it with an aversive stimulus, a puff of air in the face. So it's like you go to the drive-thru at Krispy Kreme and you say, I'd like those donuts, and then they give you one donut and then punch you in the face.
Yep. Okay? That's a bad Yelp rating.
And then they would make you drive around Krispy Kreme and do it again. And sometimes you might get a donut. Sometimes you might just get punched in the face and then drive around and do it again. So this is what these mice have to deal with. They get a squirt of juice, but mostly they get puffs of air in the face. Mm-hmm. And over several trials, the researchers varied the ratio of reward to unpleasant stimuli, punch in the face, and then they gave the rodents the ability to choose whether or not they would like to accept their reward, or Tommy's donut, or if they want to risk getting the aversive stimulus. It's all about cost-benefit analysis. It's all about choices, Tom.
Yeah.
Which is going to make you feel like you didn't get punched in the face. If the reward of the donut is more powerful than the unpleasant sensation, you'll choose it.
Right.
But if it comes with too many punches in the face, you won't. Specifically, in the case of these rodents, they found that they focused much more toward the cost of the unpleasant stimulus than on the value of the reward. They overestimate the cost relative to the benefit, and that is pessimism.
So the donut is not worth the chance. The chance for a donut is not worth the chance for a punch in the face.
Exactly. Now, how do you apply this to how you make choices? Mm-hmm. What they have found as they stimulate the caudate nucleus to see how it affects decision-making, and they watch what these rodents are doing and what their brains are doing, they believe they have found a way to impact how these rodents relate to this overestimation of cost relative to benefit, so that they can make the rodents feel better about taking the risks to achieve success, to get the donut, in spite of knowing that there may be a punch in the face. And I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. How do they do it?
Well, they electrocute them.
Weird.
Still a lot of work to be done on this area of research.
I get it.
I know nothing about it. I turned my thinking on to make sure it's aligned with yours. I'm obviously doubtful. How could anyone turn my opinion around?
Welcome to What's That Smell, a sometimes funny podcast about humans and their anxieties. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III.
And every week, we each drag one of our deepest, darkest anxieties into the light to share it, learn about it,
and hopefully laugh about it with all of you. Reach out to us. We want to hear the stories of your anxieties. So please send them to somethingstinky@whatsthatsmell.net. Again, somethingstinky@whatsthatsmell.net. And now that that's over with, Pete, with your permission, I would like to go first.
Oh, do go on.
I like that guy.
I don't know.
Furthered me well.
I don't know who he is. You won't be hearing from him again. Don't worry about it.
I'm proudly infallible while you're trying to understand all the fuss is about.
Pete, you know what's exciting about this season is that we've been asking for anxiety submissions from listeners, and a lot of them were sent in last season. We're still waiting for more, and we have a good one today that I'd like to share, if that's okay with you.
Oh, I can't wait.
So the anxiety that I'll be sharing today comes from listener, longtime fan, the amazing, talented Mandy Kaplan, who wrote in last season, "Hey guys, so I have a panic attack every time I fill out a birthday card. I think it's because 1, I'm using pen, and 2, I feel pressure to be brilliant, funny, poetic, basically literary perfection. I end up making typos that I try to turn into cute doodles, and I shake and I flop sweat. And the same thing happens when I write checks or fill out applications that are not just the check the box variety. Help me, Obi-Wans. You're my only hope, Mandy."
All of those things.
All of those things. So
I didn't even know it. As you were saying all of this, I actually reached out into I don't write a lot of stuff, and I reached out and I picked up a pen and I felt a shiver in the room.
weird. Well, Mandy, first and foremost, thanks so much for writing in. And Pete, I did a bunch of research about this topic, and I discovered something interesting.
No way.
No, it turns out Mandy is the only one in the world who has this anxiety. So by design, it's both unrelatable and stupid. Better luck next time. Listeners, please submit your anxieties to something stinky okay. Hilarious. Okay, of course I'm kidding. I 100% relate to this anxiety, and I love it for how seemingly small it seems, but it's so profound in my life, and I'm sure other listeners. I present to you graphophobia, which is the fear of handwriting. It involves the Latin roots graph, meaning to write, and phobos, the god of yikes. Before we dive in, Pete, just on a basic level, does this kind of thing, you've already kind of alluded to it, does this affect you?
Oh, but totally. And in a couple of different ways. And so there's one that about the handwriting. When I pick up, particularly the permanence of a pen. Pen permanence, and writing on something like a card, get well, condolences, happy birthday. That's why I don't send out a lot of those things, and I'm terrible for it. But also
that also sounds like a terrible card. Get well, right. Condolences, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Jeez Louise, you really shove it all in there.
Well, I was fired from Hallmark long ago. So the thing for me is that they're like mile markers for how terrible my handwriting continues to get. Every time I write a word, my handwriting gets worse.
Yes.
And it's a deterioration that reminds me of, I don't know, age or whatever.
Sure.
It's not great.
I get it, and I feel the exact same way. Let's break it down really quick. It turns out, of course, like you just sort of already alluded to, it's another phobia that relates to technology. Because typing on a computer, the pros of typing on a computer versus writing longhand are obvious. I know for me, I can type way faster than I can write, and I think and talk very fast, probably too fast, and I get hung up on how long it takes my dumb hand to get my brain words out. And then, just like you talked about, and Mandy alluded to, writing in pen with the pen permanence, it has no backspace key. There's no, and erasable pens, you can tell. Shut up, erasable pens.
Come on.
Everyone knows what's happening.
You're trying too hard, erasable pens.
And a lot of times with no backspace key, if I'm writing out a card, I unfortunately write in longhand like I talk, meaning sometimes I get ahead of myself and I'm way down the sentence, but I'm thinking about something else and I assume I'll just end up somewhere. And sometimes I just don't. It does not work out. I do that when I'm talking too. Mandy mentioned that
that's the runway clause, right? You run out of runway for one of those things, either your hand or your mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. And then hopefully you have a smoke bomb, like something to get you out of that situation. I love that Mandy mentioned that she makes mistakes into little doodles because that's adorable. I'm terrible at drawing. So if I write an incorrect word out in longhand, I just, like along the runway, just keep going. I just keep writing.
You're like Kevin Spacey's journal in Seven.
Yes, I'm totally John Doe's little, Etsy page that just keeps going. And I've literally written out the phrase, wait, why did I use that word? I meant to say. That's a horrible use of ink and time and friendship. And I also noticed that at some point in my life, I largely stopped buying individual cards, like birthday cards at stores, and instead now opt for those packs of like 30 pretty but kind of, nondescript cards.
Yeah, sort of anodyne kind of floral cards. Or
they don't say happy birthday. They just say design, and then the inside is blank because there's a huge chance I'm going to biff the first one, and I'm going to have to try again, and I can't go back to Ralph's or Hallmark and get the same card over and over again. That's just not cost effective. So do you have the same kind of thing, it sounds like?
I do, but it actually triggers a secondary anxiety that I have, which is not just the act of writing and the pen permanence, but the message itself. And that, I think, is something else she says about that. Which you talk about, like the need to be, fantastic. And this applies not just when I'm writing, but when I go, you get the Facebook alerts and it says, hey, this so-and-so had a birthday and you should totally wish them a happy birthday. And so I go and I try, and I found I'm going to out myself, if I have any friends who cross over that Venn diagram of friends, you might notice that for years, everything I said to everybody was the same because I ran out of ideas.
Right.
I love you so much, all of you. The act of me doing it might as well just be 5,000 exclamation points. That's how great I feel about you and your birthday. But mostly I say the same thing. And because I get paralyzed on birthday wishes.
Yeah. I used to I love going to parties and seeing my friends. But at one point I dreaded being invited to a party because I'd have to write something funny on the Evite response. Other people are like, yep, or can't wait. And I'm like, the history of parties and blah, 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 and all this. Like, nobody cares. Nobody's reading it. Just say yes.
But wait, Mesopotamian credit cards.
Exactly. I remember my joke that I made once was, I'm so excited for this party, I'm going to take a bunch of Ambien and sleep until it's now. And I thought that was so clever. I wrote that, I think, for a year. And no one cared for it. I didn't win an Evite award or anything.
Wait, there are Evite awards?
Oh, yeah. You haven't got... Ooh, okay. Well, I did do some actual research, and there are some scientific benefits to writing longhand. Some of these might be a little bit obvious, but taking notes, when you're taking notes in class or at a lecture, it increases learning comprehension. They've done a lot of studies on this, and it says that laptop note takers tend to transcribe lectures verbatim rather than processing information and reframing it in your own words, which means that you're just becoming a robot. You're not actually synthesizing the information. That makes sense. It stimulates the brain because when you're writing in longhand, you're using both sides of your brain, the calculative and the artistic side. So your whole brain lights on fire with learning and passion. And for me, this wasn't in the research that I saw, but it's a huge help in memorization. for me. Typing something out versus writing it out in longhand. Whenever I have to give a presentation, which I have to do quite a bit for different jobs that I have, I always rewrite the bullet points out in longhand. It just sort of helps cement them in that. Do either of those help you in that kind of situation, Pete?
Yeah, they do. And one of the things I found I started doing, and I'm one of those really, I don't know. I'm one of those people. I have the Apple Pencil with my iPad. And one of the things I found that I've started doing more is actually writing in longhand on the iPad. And there's something about that I find really calming, because when I sit down and look at my own script, it looks exactly like my handwriting. It's terrible. It's terrible. But I find that the act of writing actually does help me. Like when I sit down and I do some journaling, or I sit down and I make some notes for a show that I'm about to do, I'll do that in longhand, and then we'll stop and type up a script that I have to read, for example. But I always start in longhand in a notes app that I like, and I find that helps. And that's a really recent thing. It's a thing that just sort of reminded me the benefits of, as you say, processing and internalizing what you're trying to do, and not just spit it out all over the place as fast as you can.
Right, which is how I talk and how I type. I just vomit on the keyboard, and I'm like, well, another day done. You're in good company with that, because there are a ton of famous writers who write drafts in longhand, including Joyce Carol Oates, Neil Gaiman, the late Tom Wolfe, and actually Quentin Tarantino always writes his first drafts in longhand. When I was working at a company in Hollywood, I got to read some of those when he would first finish them.
Wow.
But that being said, all these articles, they're talking about, these are taking notes and writing drafts, not the final things designed to be shown to the world, like a birthday card. So it still doesn't really solve the anxiety. So my advice to those listening, if you have this kind of anxiety, if you're writing a card or a letter in longhand and you make a mistake, either make the mistake into an adorable doodle like Mandy, or do what I do. I keep a little vial of blood on my desk, and I splash it on the note and mail it, and then I go into hiding. Because if you think about it, the search for my body will be so much more memorable than whatever nonsense I was going to write anyways. So, blood for the win!
My anxiety is a combination of things this week. It is a combination of an actual listener suggestion.
Oh, okay.
It's a throwback to something we talked about last week.
Oh.
And that puts me, I have to say, at some risk, some physiological risk. And it is a new one that I have not talked about. All of these things, like a bouquet of wonderment.
It's a real bouillabaisse. I might not know what a bouillabaisse is. Okay.
I'm thinking maybe not. So it starts with the
cornucopia. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to figure out that word. Okay. And go.
This came in from a listener who just said, in-laws, discuss.
Really broad.
Right.
That someone just is so done with in-laws. They're just like, I don't even have a thing. Just go.
Now, I'm actually being a little bit disingenuous with that in-law thing. It was a email from a listener who gave me a much more to talk about than just in-laws. There's something to talk about. There is anxiety around there, and we should talk about it on the show. But this is how I've come back around to in-laws. I was in the car just this weekend with my own in-law, my father-in-law.
Okay.
Who is fantastic. I got very lucky with my in-laws. Really, they're delightful people. Love them very much.
And they're listeners to the show, or?
Well, I did.
Is this for real?
I did surreptitiously subscribe them to the podcast. They don't know it yet, but I picked up their phone and added What's That Smell.
But even if they weren't listeners, you'd still say the same thing.
Of course.
Okay, good.
Of course I would. Look. They're great. Several years ago, I was driving the car with my father-in-law, and I neglected to put on a turn signal. Mm-hmm. And I turned and pulled up the street into my own driveway. And who pulls up behind me, Tom?
Who? The police?
The fuzz. Yes.
Oh, geez. Into your own driveway?
In my own driveway.
So it was the lamest stakeout ever.
I tried to get out of the car, and the cop said, "Get back in the car." I said, "This is my house. I don't care." He had to do the whole thing with the get your license and registration from in the driveway in my own car. It was so embarrassing with the cop with the lights in my neighborhood. I live in a cul-de-sac, man. It's a fishbowl.
Oh, yep.
Look,
that's cul-de-sac living.
That happened.
Okay.
Now, it's all fine. It's all fine, and it's something we laugh about. But I was enormously embarrassed to have been pulled over in front of my house with my father-in-law in the car. It was horrifying. It was just horrifying. So for years, there's been great anxiety about that. So I was driving just this weekend with my father-in-law, and he starts telling me about, we're talking about health stuff. He's had some bouts of things in the hospital, and he said, we were talking about actually anxiety. And he said, at one point I had to go in for a procedure. And I said, well, what procedure is that? And this, Tom, is what leads to my anxiety today.
Okay.
What do you know about the cardiac catheterization?
Ooh, I know that the word catheter is no good.
No, It's no good. It's no good at all. And this is what my father-in-law had to have. Here's what happens with a cardiac catheterization, or a cardiac cath, or a heart cath, as they say in the biz.
On the streets.
It's a procedure, right? You don't want a back alley heart cath.
You don't want to see cath?
Oh,
all right.
Man. No. So it's a procedure to examine how well your heart is working. Mm-hmm. So they need to check blood flow and muscle strength of the actual heart muscle. So they have to insert a small hollow tube. That is the catheter. It's inserted into a large blood vessel, and it leads to your heart, and it goes straight up into your heart.
Okay. That sounds okay, I guess.
Do you know where that blood vessel starts? Do you know where that goes? Do you know where that is?
Where, like your neighbor's place?
Practically.
Yeah, where?
It is. If your neighbor's place is some sort of a euphemism for your groin, then yes, Tom, it starts in your neighbor's place.
Is that what does catheter always have to do with the bathing suit area? Because that's what I always think of.
Boy, it kind of feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
It's either going in the urethra.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Or it's going in the vein into your groin, because it's a nice big blood vessel, and so they stick it in there. Now, I've never had it done, but I have a history with heart things. I have trouble with heart things, and he starts telling me the story of the cardiac cath. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I swear to you, I'm starting to have a panic attack. Right? He's telling me about how they have to shave your leg down there, and then they give you a little local anesthetic, and then they also have to give you another shot, remember, within your arm, where they have to give you a general anesthetic to relax you, but you're awake during this whole process.
Why?
Because I don't know, they need you to talk about things. So they are doing all this with the x-rays and everything, and you're awake. And I start like feeling all the blood drain from my face, but I'm trying to play cool. Yeah. I'm trying to play cool because in-laws. And but if I pass out in the car next to my father-in-law when he's just trying to tell me about a medical procedure that he had going on, I will never live that down in my head.
Wait, what is the police officer doing during this entire conversation? Is he like, guys, wrap it up?
He's just tailing us. Yeah, no, he's actually in the back seat now, just chilling, eating his Krispy Kremes.
Okay.
So we're talking about this, and I feel the blood start to leave. I feel my heart starting to beat. I can feel my pulse in my neck, and I can't say anything. I just cross my arms across my chest in the spirit of giving myself a little wee hug.
Sure.
And I let him keep talking.
No.
And it keeps going. They insert the thing into the blood vessel, and they push it up into your thingamabob, and so you're asked not to eat or drink anything, all that. So and then they make this little needle puncture through your skin, and they get to the large blood vessel.
Can I ask? Do they use an infant needle? Right.
It's very funny. And so they put this straw-sized tube that they call a sheath, and they insert that into the vessel, and then the doctor uses that sheath as like the gateway. Right? That's the rainbow bridge to guide the catheter into your body, into your leg. And then they just like push it. It's on a little video screen, and they just push it up into your thing. So you may feel some pressure, they said, and they say you shouldn't feel any pain, but I don't know. I'm going to be so unconscious at that point. Yeah. If I have to do this. So they also, then they have these instruments sometimes that they place at the edge, at the tip of the catheter, like, these little sensors and things to go up into your heart chamber. Now, just Sit with that. They're putting a thing in your leg that ends up in your chest. And I really struggle with that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I've gotten lost in my own apartment building trying to get from my apartment to my car.
Let alone from your neighbor's place to your heart.
Exactly. Oh, man.
And sometimes they have to use the catheter to widen a narrow heart valve opening. That's called a valvoplasty. Yeah. Now, when they take this thing out of you, it's a big blood vessel, right?
Why is that even worse to me for some reason?
Yeah.
The idea of it taking out. Oh.
Yeah. And he said they actually have to put in, at least for him, they had to put in like a plug. It was like a cork to let it start healing. They have to stamp it up. I am now I'm quivering in the car at this point. As he's
You've
telling
called
me
the
about
police
the car.
back.
I am quivering. I've opened the window. I've taken my hat off and I'm leaning my head outside the window because I just can't. I can't tolerate it. It's too much medical stuff. I'm going to be a hot mess. I don't want to age anymore. I'm done.
Oh,
that is the most horrible thing. So then you have to apply pressure a lot. You have to keep your legs straight. You can't get out of bed for a day. Your heartbeat and vital signs you have to watch those because you never know what could happen. You've had an outside entity in your heart. Mm-hmm. There may be swelling. In this case, he had an allergic reaction to the dye. They use a dye so they can actually see and isolate the different chambers of the heart. And he had an allergic reaction, and that was not
an
great.
allergic reaction to the dye. Did they use peanuts? Why? What kind of dye are they? Bees? That sucks. That's already so horrific.
Bees.
Yeah.
Yes. It's straight into anaphylactic shock. So no, so as you can imagine, I did a little research, Tom.
There's more.
Here's what can happen. Damage to blood vessels. Rarely, says the research, the catheter may poke a hole or scrape a blood vessel as it's threaded into the heart. That doesn't sound great. An allergic reaction to the dye that's used during this coronary angiography. That's terrible. Organs start to shut down. Your kidney starts to shut down in this case, and you go into organ failure. That's not great. This seems like they are building a strong case for science to really weigh in on this and say, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe we should just go back to the stethoscope.
Maybe we should just go back to smallpox and call it a day.
How about this? A buildup of blood or fluid in the sac that surrounds the heart.
What is that?
This fluid can prevent the heart from beating properly. Don't get fluid in your heart sac. That's terrible.
God. It's funny because back in pioneer days, it sounds like the worst. But if it's living to 25 or heart sacks and dick bags, I wonder if maybe 25 and out doesn't sound too bad.
This is your choice. This is your adverse reaction choice. You're a mouse. It's not Krispy Kremes. You're going to die at 25 of natural causes. And when I say natural causes, you'll be eaten by a bear. Or you'll live to 90, but you need 3 cardiac catheterizations in the last 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
You get to choose which is going to make you feel less worse. That's where we are today. I managed to get out of the car to wrap up the story. I did manage to get out of the car and stumble into the house and into the air conditioning. And I laid down, I kid you not, flat on the floor of my bedroom.
Oh, did you really?
And let it pass. I was having a straight up panic attack and I had to get out from under it. And that was the story. So thank you to my father-in-law for introducing me to a new process I did not know I had to look forward to, likely, and can't wait not to ever do that.
Thanks.
At all.
What are the kind of, because that sounds horrific, but I don't know much about science, and I'm surely not a doctor yet. But what are the risks involved with something? Because going from your neighbor's house all the way into your heart seems like a pretty risky situation.
Well, so I actually do have a number that's sort of related to that, and that is there was some research done in a study called mortality related to cardiac catheterization and angiography, and so here they are studying over a 14-month period. They studied 53,581 cardiac catheterization, right? They were consecutively and prospectively reported to the Registry Committee of the Society for Cardiac Angiography. This is a report on PubMed. And in that 14-month period, out of 53,000 plus heart caths, they counted 75 deaths.
Okay.
21 of those arrived in the laboratory they call in extremis, right? So their deaths were expected, irrespective of catheterization. So 21 of those were already injured to the point
already
where
on their way out.
They were already on their way out. 35 of them, a complication involving the heart occurred during the catheterization, resulting in death. And 16 of them, catheterization seemed uneventful, but the death occurred suddenly after the procedure, within 10 minutes to 10 hours after the procedure, possibly from an allergic reaction, etc. Of those 16, 8 had left the main coronary artery obstruction greater than or equal to 90%. And so they were already had heart issues that were non-trivial. Right. They already had massive blocks.
And 4 were just like pranks.
Yeah. So actually one of them was a Hamburglar, and we knew that he was on his way out anyway.
Weird.
He just wasn't popular anymore.
Sure, I get it.
So there you go. I mean, it seems like out of that, when you look at the ones, the group that I am most concerned with is the group that actually got it done and finished, and they were leaving, and then 10 hours later they dropped dead. Like that's it. I mean, if you have to have the thing done.
Yeah.
But out of 53,000 plus things, this seems like a reasonably safe thing. And I can see a world out there where I could approach this anxiety and move through it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Have you thought about maybe just getting it done now? Just get it out of the way. It's like a Band-Aid. Like the problem, it's like unwrapping a candy in the theater. Just do it real quick, get it over, and then you're smooth sailing. I'm going to make an appointment for you. I think I have some calls to make. We're going to get you a dick bag and a sack nuts and all of those gross things. Ugh. Gross. Today's podcast was brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/scent-of-a-podcast. Over 180, I'm sure by now, again, it's over 185,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Pete?
Well, all I can tell you, Tom, is I know they didn't stop at 180,000 because I found my next listen. And I'm qualifying this as my next listen. I've only listened to about an hour of it, but I love it, and I need to share it with everybody.
What is it?
When you're done thinking about your surgeries, when you're done thinking about that heart catheterization, when you're done thinking about all of those things, I want you to go listen to Peter Brannon's book, The Ends of the World, Volcanic Apocalypses, Lethal Oceans, and Our Quest to Understand Earth's Past Mass Extinctions. I kid you not, this is fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, he takes us on a wild ride through the planet's 5 mass extinctions, and in the process offers us a glimpse of our increasingly dangerous future.
Oh.
The world, listen to this. The world has ended 5 times. It has been broiled, frozen, poisoned, gassed, smothered, and pelted by asteroids. In The Ends of the World, Peter Brannon dives into deep time, exploring Earth's past dead ends, and in the process offers us a glimpse of our possible future. You think heart caths are bad? Just wait.
Wait a minute.
For The Ends of the World.
When was
by Peter Brannon.
When was the Earth smothered? Is that like Venus had a pillow? What? How do you smother a planet? I'll have to listen to the book.
There yet.
I'll have to listen to the book. All right, cool.
Yes. You should go check it out on Audible. You may want to lay down while you're listening to this. Please don't be operating any heavy machinery. This will freak you out in a number of disturbing ways, but it's great.
Again, visit www.audibletrial.com/scent-of-a-podcast to try that book or another book that won't give you nightmares forever.
We don't pay to advertise this show, so we appreciate you sharing it with others you think would be interested. We are in the heat of season 2, but you know what? Those 5-star reviews in iTunes and Apple Podcasts really help others to discover the show. So if you like what you've heard, share the love. Give somebody a hug and a podcast.
Coming up next week, these coaches can make up to $50 an hour working with kids to be the best at Fortnite.
Humanity, I hate you. God.
What am I taking?
I don't know, babe.
Wait a minute. These are junior mints.
These are.
I knew he wasn't a doctor. And I held it in my mouth for the next 5 to 6 minutes.
Oh God!
For the end of the bus ride home. I guess they're probably a little not self-explanatory. What's the word? Obvious? That's cool when I can't think of the word obvious. Thank you all so much for listening. Today's tune was Little Picture by Arthur Dove. I'm Tommy Metz III.
And I'm Pete Wright. Thank you for downloading. We'll be back next week on What's That Smell?